Over the last few lessons, we've looked at two forms of a line, slope-intercept and general form. Today we're going to look at the last form of a line. So I'd ask you to pause the video and copy down the advantages and disadvantages of each. We've talked about them quite a bit, so just make note of them. Okay, so our last form of a line is called point slope. And here's an example. Here's an example of equation of a line that is in what's called point slope. So the question I have is, how do you know it's a line? And the easiest way to know something is a line is to draw the picture or make a table of values and find the pattern. So let's draw a picture. So I'm going to tell you that the slope and y-intercept are nice. So you go ahead and put this in y equals mx plus b form. And if we were going to do that, the first thing we would do is get rid of the brackets. So if I went ahead and did that, I got rid of the brackets. And then what I would do is I'd add 8 to both sides to isolate y, again mx plus b, and here's what I would have. So from that, I know that the y-intercept is 6, and then I'm going to use slope as a traffic cop, up to right 1, up to right 1, etc. And I'm going to keep on going until I go off the graph. So there we go right there, and there we go right there. So those are all the nice points on the graph. So in looking at, not the graph right now, but the graph shows us it's linear. But if we go look at these two forms, I want you to notice something right off the bat. Well, I want you to notice they both have a 2, and they both have a 2 in front of the x. Now, the one up above that I've highlighted yellow, it has 2 in front of the brackets x, but if you got rid of the brackets, we'd have a 2. So what do you notice about these two things? Well, both have a 2 in them, and that 2 represents slope. So in this new form of a line, we do have slope information. In the new form of the line, we obviously don't have the y-intercept because nowhere on there do I see a -6. But if I ask you what is the value of this point right here, you would read it off and you would see 7,8. So on this new form of line called point slope form of a line, what I want you to notice is 7,8 is on the graph, and 7 and 8 are in the equation. Now again, right now you could go, well, that could be a coincidence, and it could, but I'm just going to do one example, and I'm going to say it's not a coincidence. This is the way it's going to work. When you have something written in point slope form, or sorry, in point slope form, you get information from that. You get slope information, and you get a point. In mx plus b, you get slope information and a point, but the point is always a particular point, the y-intercept. In point slope form, it's another point. It can be any other point. I remember a few lessons ago when we were drawing pictures using slope as the traffic cop, it didn't matter where you started as long as you had a starting point. And that's what this form of the line does. So in my note here, we know that in order to draw a line, we either need 2 points or 1 point slope. The point does not have to be the y-intercept. It can be any point. And that leads to this form of a line called the point slope form. And again, as I've just highlighted, the number in front of the brackets is exactly the same slope as the number in front of x in slope-intercept form. And these 2 points right here represent a coordinate on the graph, on the line. Now, here's what we really have to be careful about. This minus and this minus are a part of the form of the line. And this is going to cause us a little trouble, but hopefully by doing a little bit of practice, we'll get past that. So if we do a quick couple of questions, as we've done before, where I might say, what is the slope of a line? What is the y-intercept or x-intercept? Well, in this one right here, all I want to do is find the slope in one point. Remember, we could go ahead and graph that. So in our new form of a line, the slope is the number in front of the brackets, and the point is that number right there, that number right there. So if we have our formula out or form out, then it's really nice to see that they match up. So in this one right here, it matches up very well. The slope would be 5, and a coordinate would be 3, 4. So again, we're just picking off the pieces according to the form. Now in this one over here, the slope is still 3 over 4, pretty straightforward. But in this case, the point is -2, -1. It's not 2, 1. And the reason it's not 2, 1, because in our form that has to look the same, our formula or form has a minus there. So in order to see what it is, we might think of an easier way to think what it is, but in order to see why it's -2, -1, we have to write this in terms of the minus. So how do you make a plus into a minus? Well, you have two negatives. Two negatives make a positive. So this thing right here, the negative negative, makes that a positive. And then this part right here is your definition, and this point right here is simply your number. Similarly, with this over here, it's going to be -2. And again, there's your minus minus to give you a plus, and here's a part of your formula. So that algebra can be a little bit tricky. There might be an easier way to determine the point, and the easier way to determine the point might be the point on the line. The point on the line is simply the opposite of the numbers given. So for example, in the one on the left, the numbers are given are -4 and -3. So the opposite is +4 and +3. On this number on the right, that's a little bit tricky. The numbers given are +1 and +2. And the numbers we really want are -1 and -2. So whether you fit it to the form or formula, or whether you just have a nice little shortcut that helps you understand what it is, this is all it is. It's understanding what something is and what it looks like and what each part represents. Okay then, so given we know what the parts represent, then we can go ahead and write the equation of a line. So again, this is Fisher-Price math time. You put the right thing in the right spot. So we have y minus, that's a part of the definition, and here's our y coordinate, so it's going to be y minus 4 is equal to m x minus, and here's our x, and we're going to plug that in as well. And again, technically this isn't wrong, but it's not a nice way of looking at it. So the last thing we'd really want to do is we'd want to change these two to one symbol, and there's our plus sign. So again, just like we did earlier, plugging things into slope-intercept, plugging things into general form of the line, we're doing that exact same thing. So let's go ahead and do this last one. It would be y minus the 0, the y coordinate, is equal to 1/2 bracket x minus -5. This would be y minus 0 is equal to 1/2 x plus 5. And if you really wanted to, you could get rid of the y minus 0. So in these examples right here then, given that we have these two forms of a line, all we really want to do is pick off the coordinate, that we want, and remember the coordinate is the opposite, we'd pick off the coordinate and then we'd use slope to find the information. So let's do these two right here really quickly. Okay, remember my coordinate is the opposite of -4 and 3, but remember it's x comma y. So the opposite of 3 is -3 and the opposite of -4 is 4. So here's our -3 comma 4. There's that point, -3 comma 4, and we've just read it from the equation above, and we thought opposite. And again, the biggest mistake students make, especially when they're first learning, is they get the y and the x mixed up. So it's really important that you remember ordered pairs, x and y. Find the x number first, find the y number, and then plot it. Then we're going to use our slope. We're going to go down 5 over 1, down 5 over 1, and we're simply you're going to use a ruler, but I can't, so there I go. There's our equation of that line. And I'm going to say it's really easy. My favorite form of a line is point slope. Our second one, well, our y-coordinate is 0, -0, and the opposite is +0 or just 0. Next thing is 5, so the opposite of +5 is -5. So we're going to graph that, -5 comma 0. So here's -5 comma 0, and the slope is 1 over 2. Up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, etc. So this one turns out to be not a nice y-intercept, but we don't care. Okay, so finally, all the other things we've done, these are all matching up. I'm going to give you a picture, and we're going to figure out the equation of a line. So let's imagine on this first example, I gave you this point right here. I gave you 2 comma 1. And I want to write the equation of that line. So remember, we always start off, it's always a good idea to start off with the form that we want to put in. And now what we can do is, well, we can put some 2 information there, we can put some 1 information there, and all we have to do is figure out the slope. So if I kind of do this in a 2-step problem, this would be y minus 1, m, x minus 2, and the only thing I'd have to do now is figure out the slope. And again, we know how to figure out the slope. I know that's a negative slope. It's down 1 and right 2. So finally, the last piece of information, or the first, it really wouldn't matter, is that. So there's that equation of that line right there. Now in this one, we have 5 comma 3. So this would be y minus 5 equals y minus 3 m x minus 5. And in order to figure out the slope of that one there, we find 2 nice points, and they're highlighted. So there's up to, and there's over 7. Up to right 7, so the slope is positive 2 over 7. So in this equation of this line would be this right here. Now, if you look at the graph is the y-intercept right here is definitely not a nice point. You'd have a bit of a weird fraction, but we don't care. I'm not asking for the y-intercept. I'm asking you to draw a line, and I'm asking you to figure out the equation of the line. So that's our last form of a line, and it's called point slope, and I think it's the best form. So I just want to quickly go over what I think the advantages and disadvantages of this. Well, again, one of the advantages, it's easy to graph, but it's only easy to graph if you have a nice point, if the point is nice. Now, most of the time, they will be. You know, even for the other forms, maybe the y-intercept won't be nice, but you'll at least know one nice point. The other thing is you can get the slope automatically. Again, if you know what that number in front of the brackets represents, you can do the slope automatically. Now, the disadvantages is, well, it does not give the x and y intercepts. And in fact, in order to find the x and y intercepts, what you'd first have to do is expand all that out and collect like terms, and then plug in 0 for x and 0 for y and all that sort of stuff. So I don't recommend this one as a form that works well for finding x and y intercepts, but it does work well for graphing, and it does work well for the slope. And in a pinch, if you had to find the x and y intercept, you could.